What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to an episode of Dominance Academy, and I'm your host, Coach Justin. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this this thing about fake doms, fake men, shit like that. There's a lot of crossover between fake doms and fake men. And the inspiration was actually sent to me by my girl. She found a post on some Facebook group, and and she wanted to share that with me, and it was some pretty good stuff, and so good that I thought it would be good to share it with you guys. But right now, trying to find this audio. Okay. And as you can see, I started a new intro video, made that, and so I'm pretty happy about that. Well, it was a lot of fun making that sort of shit. Like I mentioned before, there's like AI has made creative things a little dry, but easily accessible and a lot of fun. Yes, sir. What's up, King Solar Power? Yeah, so just trying to get that music going. Ah, here it is. Okay. All right. So the article that she had sent me is called "Everyone Wants to Be a Daddy Dom Until She," and it goes through a list of things. And I'm going to get into that, but it's things in the game, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in the BDSM context, they all are fine and good. Like Mike Tyson was saying, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. It's the same sort of stuff. It's the same sort of thing where a guy will consider himself a man. They will consider themselves a dom until they're faced with the small, intricate little nuances and details that happen in the day-to-day, and they get kind of like hampered down by these things. They get hindered because they don't know how to handle these situations. They don't know how to handle it mentally, how to handle it physically, how to handle it emotionally. And then they don't know what to do, and they just end up dropping the ball, and it just turns into a load of shit. And guys do this all the time when faced with women. They don't have any game. They don't know how to have good conflict resolution. They don't know how to listen. They don't know how to act, and it leads to a whole lot of problems. It leads to a lot of unhappy guys, a lot of unhappy women, and the same goes true with doms and subs. There will be very unhappy subs out there. And sometimes it will lead to them saying, oh, this guy's a fake dom. So, like I said, the article says, everyone wants to be a daddy dom until she, and the first one here is, cries over the smallest thing, and you need to know how to deal with that. And the truth of the matter is that women are emotional beings. They're emotional creatures, and you have to deal with them as such. If you don't know how to handle that, and then things will just fall apart. And I've seen in my students where they're the ones that are in relationships or marriages, they'll get thrown off their square by the woman being thrown off her square, which means that her reactions are then sort of leading you because you're reacting off of her reactions. And so this really doesn't work out well, because you then have someone who's unstable, at least in that moment, leading someone else into instability. And the guy will internalize what she's saying and start to feel bad, or start to get angry, or start to feel guilty, or a whole host of emotions. And once those emotions start to get activated, now he's going to start behaving differently. He'll start acting in a different way. He'll start having different responses. He'll get upset at her. He might raise his voice. He might start crying. He might hit her. He might storm out. He might shut down. this is not an effective way of handling someone else's emotional state, right? You can't just react with her, because then you're in the same boat, and then it's like, well, okay, we're both crazy in the boat now. Who's driving? Okay, so yes, everybody wants to be the guy until she's crying over some small thing, and not knowing how to handle that, not knowing how to deal with her. So that's the first one. All right, so everyone wants to be a man, everyone wants to be a dom until she has a tantrum and needs to know how to deal with that. So again, like, there'll be an emotional flare up on her end, and she, something will happen. Either she's like super sad, or she's really upset, or she's angry, she's throwing a temper tantrum, and you have to be able to ascertain what's happening in that moment, why it's happening, and then how to either check it or redirect it in the proper manner. And the thing is that if there is a dynamic involved where people have an understanding of a certain sort of protocol about how things are dealt with, then you've got it on easy street, or a little bit easier. But if you're just some guy floating by the seat of his pants in a relationship, then it's not going to work out so well, right? You're not going to what's up, Carmen? Thank you for stopping by. Yeah, you're not going to be able to deal with the situation because you're ill-equipped. You're unprepared completely. So it's important to learn the skills necessary so that you can deal with her when she's freaking out about something small, or she's having a temper tantrum and she wants more of your attention, or she's trying to treat you like some sort of emotional punching bag. And a lot of guys, they'll just take it on the chin and never really address the situation, never learn how to redirect it, and never allow her to come to a greater understanding, but through her emotions. Okay, it's not like the great understanding through intellect comes after the emotional upheaval. So the emotions will creep up, and then they'll come back down. Once they're down, then you can have rational discussion. But when they're up here at their peak, this is something that guys need to learn how to handle without getting affected themselves. Yeah, sorry. Don't think all right, that's better. Don't think I need my hat anymore indoors. Okay, so another thing that says here, everyone wants to be a daddy dom or a man until she needs you to plan things down to the smallest details. This is something that a lot of guys lack. Like, they want to do the fun thing with the girl. All right, they want to go out dancing. They want to get an Airbnb. They want to plan a sexy weekend. They want to do this. They want to do that. Or they want to just have like a sexual escapade. Fine, whatever it is. And they don't really plan it out. They don't run through the details of how, say, like each hour is going to progress. Right? Because guys, like on our own, we can just float through a situation. We can easily just float through a situation and just kind of go with the flow, because I don't know, maybe just we're more comfortable with not knowing every detail, and we can just kind of meander through a situation and typically enjoy ourselves. I mean, unless it's completely awful, but the fact is we can do that. All right. Women, on the other hand, they like having a plan. They like knowing what to expect up ahead, both for just mental clarity and calmness, but also anticipation, because they have an idea of what's going to happen next, and they have something to look forward to. Dare I say it, like, grown women are a lot like kids in this respect. In many of these things that I'm pointing out, they're a lot like kids in this respect. So it's kids like to know what they're gonna have, so they have that like anticipation, like, oh yeah, at the end of this week we're gonna go to Six Flags, and they're like thinking about it and looking at the website and looking at all the different rides they want to go to or whatever. They get into that shit. Okay, me, if I've got a plan and I'm gonna go do something, I'm not gonna be sitting there doing research and getting all super excited and all that shit. Like, it's just how I am. But ladies definitely will. And so again, for the mental clarity the mental calmness, which comes from having a prepared mind, there's also the aspect of anticipation and looking forward to these things. And a lot of guys, like I said, they're used to just operating on their own, so they don't quite have the need to plan for themselves in the same way, because they can go with the flow. So, then when they don't do it, they get stuck in these situations with their thumb up their ass, and the woman's looking at them like, well, what's next? And they don't know, and they're just kind of making up shit on the fly. And this is a problem. And this can happen through planning of events together. This can happen through, whether it's dating or you're in a relationship or you're married. Excuse me. It can also happen in just a sexual tryst where you're getting together just to have sex. It's a one-night stand. You met off a dating app, whatever. Like, it shouldn't just be like making things up as you go along. Have a plan, like have a vision, and sit back and think about this for a little while first and say, okay, how do I want this to pan out? Because if you have a vision, if you have a picture, you're more likely to have it go in that general direction. So I have my guys really map this out. They write it out, basically create a script as if you're a director for a movie. And you create a script for the scenario that's going to happen. And just like in movies, things don't work like 100% to the script. There's some freestyling in there, and that does happen. And sometimes there's happy accidents, and sometimes there's not. But it's better than going in to shoot a movie and you have no script at all. And you're just like, well, we're all skilled people here, so let's just figure it out. We can do it. Like, things would take forever. There'd be way too much deliberation back and forth. No one would know what's going on. So it's in your best interest to have a plan. Whether it's with your woman and she's your girlfriend, she's your wife, or this is someone that you just met off a dating app to have sex. This is something that you need to have. You need to be planning out. And this will put you in the place of being more so on the side of the street where real men and doms are, and instead of fake doms and fake men. So moving on here, everyone wants to be a daddy dom or a man until she needs a cuddle when you want to fuck, or she needs to be bruised when you want to cuddle. So basically saying, this is in a BDSM context, but when you have conflicting desires, okay, when she wants to cuddle and you want to fuck, or she wants to fuck and you want to cuddle, basically what you want to do is not on the same page. And it's like, well, how are you going to handle that? So, and of course, when it comes to dynamics, it all depends on what your agreements are. If it's like a free use sort of thing where, or if it's like a marriage sort of thing where the guy who, if he wants sex, she's giving it to him no matter what, with no problems, if there's going to be enthusiastic consent. But in terms of not in that situation where there's conflicting desires, it's like, how are you going to handle that? How are you going to negotiate that sort of thing? Okay, because like maybe this is somebody you give a shit about. What are you going to do to facilitate their emotions so that everything is good? And they get what they want and you get what you want. Now this can go into so many different ways where say you want to fuck and she wants to cuddle. There's a lot of ways where those two things can coincide at the same time. Provided like all health is, normal and, she's not sick or feeling off or whatever. What's up, Uncle Guns? Good to see you, man. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to go about that. I'm not going to get into the specifics of that type of game where, there's conflicting desires and both are good, but just in different ways. And you can combine these things into different things. So like, here's an example. In scene creation, okay, so in BDSM, we have scenes where we basically are directors and we create small events where both people are taking on a persona or a character and you reenact a scene. And just much like acting, like you're just having fun with acting. It doesn't have to be super drawn out and very serious, although they can get that way, but it's really just sort of making a deliberate sexual environment, okay? And you can combine these things, and they're not always geared to be rough and sadist and masochistic and all that sort of stuff. There's sensual scenes, there's romantic scenes. Like anytime, like say you guys make a gesture to create a romantic sexual experience, that's you creating a scene, right? That's not something that just happens normally. You're putting in some creative effort into molding the experience. So you, in a sense, are creating a scene in that way. So you can absolutely create a romantic scene. You can create a cuddly scene. You can create a therapeutic scene where it's like involved with like oils and acupressure and massage and, you know, candles and all this sort of thing. Put on some spiritual music and all that shit. And, you know, you can combine that with the sex, the cuddling and all that sort of stuff. You can get yourself some really soft fabrics. I know that there's these massage gloves. It's like, it looks like an oven mitt, but it has it's made out of mink fur, and mink fur is extremely soft. If you ever touched mink, it's super soft. So you can get these mitts that are with mink and use that as part of your cuddling and your massage. You can combine cuddling massage with the sex, and it turns into this whole thing. So then cuddling sort of encompasses this much larger emotional and physical scope. Okay? Like, doesn't mean just like not doing anything and lying there and holding one another. Sure, that it can be that, but that doesn't mean that it always has to be that it's only defined that way. There's a lot of ways you can creatively make this happen. Okay, moving on. Everyone wants to be a daddy dom until she so it goes on the little article bit here. It says everyone wants to be a daddy dom when it's all about sloppy head and rough sex, but the thing is, and it's never all about those things. It's about knowing when to build her up and when to break her down. It's about never letting her feel alone. And so the build up, I guess that's probably self-explanatory, but the thing about breaking her down is it's important. It's something worth mentioning, because say she's, you know, like earlier in the list here, she's feeling upset about something, and her mind is being taken over by some sort of thought, some sort of worry, or some sort of stress. Okay, you can break that down to where there's no more attachment to that, and now she's left feeling more vulnerable, because, you know, when you're upset about something, you can become fully attached to that, and then it becomes part of your identity in that moment, and you become that. It becomes attached to how you're expressing yourself. So with certain sort of verbal and mental skills, you can break that connection and break her down in that sense. And now, depending on your relationship, depending on your dynamic, now you become this anchoring system where she's feeling supported, she's feeling safe emotionally within your presence. So all of these things are very much geared towards that. It's very important to understand these things, because it's not about like appealing to her emotions. It's not about you know, just making her feel good, you know, making her feel comfortable. Okay, those are a result of you dismantling certain things so that you become this anchor, because then it becomes habitual. Anchors become habitual, so that when certain shit happens, it's just being around you feels better, just talking to you feels better, just feeling your hand on her feels better. And now you become the source of peace. You become the source of relaxation, the source of healing, and so on. I appreciate that comment, Carmen. So this sort of stuff is the thing that really escapes a lot of guys, and I don't think they realize, and maybe they don't want it. Okay. So I think it's good to try things or understand things or be immersed in things before you decide that you don't want something in your life. Okay. So, it's kind of like, my kids were little and I wanted them to try something to eat, and they're like, I don't want that. And it's like, well, how do you know? You've never tasted it before. How could you possibly know? Then they taste it and they're like, actually, it's pretty good. Or like, you know what? My assumption was right. It tastes like shit. I don't want to eat that anymore. And that's fine. But the thing is that guys will have this sort of opinion in that same sort of way without having an experience of what it's like to have a woman that's invested in you. And when she's invested in you, she's actually investing in herself, because she's allowing certain emotional freedoms to happen, which causes certain types of growth that don't happen otherwise. Like, she cannot release and lose control of her states of being beyond what they are if there's nothing there to facilitate that. Because she's not going to be able to do it on her own. Like, she may know that it's possible, but the actual mechanisms involved require another person who has that framework in order to allow that to happen. And then the more she relaxes, the more she comes into a certain aspect of her being that she may or may not know exists. And she then becomes feeling more full. She becomes more identified with a deeper sense of self. So you might want to experience this sort of thing first, because I know there's a lot of guys who are like, you know what, I don't want to deal with that shit. That sounds like hard work. That sounds like nonsense. I don't want to have any of that. I just want the sloppy head and the rough sex. I don't give a fuck about the other things. All right, that's fine. Okay. But there's a huge difference. There's a stark difference between getting that from a woman you haven't created this emotional freedom from and this emotional relaxation from, versus getting those same sort of things from a woman who does have that emotional relaxation and that emotional freedom. It's a huge difference. And when you experience them different, like individually, it's like night and day, and then you understand. And at that point of your understanding, you can then say, you know what, that's not for me. Or you can say, you know what, this is great. I want to continue having these types of interactions with women. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be together. It can often be easier that way, but it's not necessary. It's not necessary in order to exist. All right, pardon me. So Carmen says, I think some guys think treating a woman's emotional turmoils as shut it up, get it away from, as a dominant way to be, or get it away from me. Yeah, you know, that's true. And there's sometimes a call for that, where you just need to shut things down. And in the same way, in a certain situation with kids, if they're having a certain type of emotional reaction towards a certain stimuli, it's all very contextual based, where you just need to shut it down. And because that is the most efficient means of getting to the point. Now, that's not the case for every single situation. It's all context based, which means that as a man, yes, it's weird because you have to be grounded yet flexible at the same time. It's weird. It's almost like drunken kung fu. Like, the drunken kung fu has incredibly strong stance work. Every bit of kung fu has strong stance work. So they are very grounded, but they're also very flexible to whatever comes their way. And they can move and dodge and parry and redirect everything without even moving their feet. So they stay where they are, but they can easily move and manipulate things as they come at them. So yeah, I think a lot of guys, they are intimidated by anything coming at them from a woman that isn't just pleasant, right? And the thing is, though, is that it's not going to be that way 100% of the time. Now, if you're doing things right, it'll be that way more often than not, okay? But things happen. Things happen outside of your control. There might have, like, she might have been on the bus and there was a car accident while she was in the bus, and a car like slammed into the bus. Everybody's okay, but she's shook, all right? And she comes home and, you know, she's a mess. Or she was fired and she's fucking pissed off because a coworker who she thought was her friend threw her under the bus. She's gonna be fucking heated, okay? If you just say, shut up, I don't want to hear any of that shit, that's not gonna do anything. That's going to work against what you have going, okay? It's key to understanding how to recognize what's happening emotionally, not have it affect you at all, and be able to redirect what's happening. Now, with one of my guys, and I'll use him as an example, I won't mention any names, but he too quickly moves to that. And I told him, I said, listen, I love that you have a good problem solving mentality, but you first have to acknowledge. Because while your solution or the way you mend the situation or redirect her emotions is effective and true, it's more effective if you take a brief moment before implementing that to acknowledge and recognize the emotional state she's in. Because while he was very skillful at doing this, at the same time, he was dismissing her. He was dismissing her reality. He was dismissing her emotional state. And after a while, if you keep doing this again and again and again, she's going to start feeling this guy is dismissing me. He's dismissing my feelings. He's devaluing my part of my presence. He's devaluing my reality, my experience of me in this life. And that becomes destructive over a period of time. So I told him, you got to nip that in the bud and you have to acknowledge. It doesn't mean you have to feel it. You don't have to do anything. You just acknowledge. Just like when you got kids and they're upset and you squat down and get with them eye to eye and you're like, hey, listen, buddy, I can tell that you're really upset right now. And that sucks that kid broke your toy or whatever it is. That's all that's necessary. Just a quick acknowledgement of where they're at. And then you can start redirecting by taking that energy and start harnessing it and slowly turn it around and move it into another direction. Okay, but this requires a certain level of sensitivity, you know, and I don't mean being soft, but I mean sensitive in the way that, like, you know, radar and sonar and just things that are pick up on other bits of information, being sensitive in that way, having sensory abilities. Okay, instead of just being so hard-headed and stuck, be like, no, this is what you do. This, I don't want to hear it. Shut the fuck up, and then just move on because I don't want to be bothered with that. It's incredibly dismissive. Okay, so just understand that part of that game is recognizing where she's at. It doesn't mean you have to prioritize it. It doesn't mean you have to put her experience on a pedestal. It doesn't mean you have to simp over it. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. And it certainly shouldn't mean you getting thrown off your square emotionally and now you're being led by her shit. Okay? That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just a verbal recognition. That's all it is. It's saying, hey, I see your blip on the sonar. I get that. That fucking sucks. And then you can go from there and redirect. Okay, and this is incredibly powerful because check this out. The emotions are already strong. Once you redirect, the intensity often doesn't drop down. Okay, the intensity just gets shifted into another lane. And once it's in another lane, then it can be utilized in much more creative ways. It can be utilized in sexual ways, in sensual ways, in naughty ways, all sorts of ways, because when there's strong emotion, it likes to be released. So it doesn't matter where. So if it comes in and it wants to get released as anger, this can then be redirected and released in a different way, and it's just as cathartic. It's just as cathartic for her. But this requires having the ability to lead and not being affected by her emotions, not being scared of her emotions. And understand, like, that's just what she's processing. It's like, it doesn't mean anything to you. I mean, it shouldn't. I mean, unless it's like something terrible, like, you know, the fucking neighbor killed her dog or some shit like that. But it really, really shouldn't, like, come in and affect you. Because once that happens, then you're going to have a much more difficult time redirecting the situation. Carmen here's with another comment. She says, it also almost seems to undermine his overall authority, because as a woman, it makes me think, like, how can he really know best how to reroute my mentality if he won't even consider where I'm coming from? Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. So it's being able to just see the map, instead of being so hyper-focused on the one thing. So, like I mentioned about having a conductor mindset, about having a mountain mind. The mountain is not moved by anything. No storm will ever move a mountain. All right? And having a conductor mindset is what allows you to forge and manipulate the situation. And I don't mean manipulate in a malicious sense, manipulate in a sense that a sculptor can manipulate clay. Okay, they change thing from one form to another. All right, that's manipulation. So there's just the word gets a bad rap, but it really just means change, to willfully change something. So the conductor, and I mention this all the time to just drill it into people's heads, he's not listening to the music, he's only hearing it. His ears are activated and he can hear what's happening, but he's not listening to it in the sense that he's being deeply immersed in the music. Because if he does that, then he's going to lose track of everything. He's going to lose track of where everybody is in the song, where everybody's doing in the orchestra, and it's going to get all fucked up. Okay? He has to be a few inches detached. So I tell my guys, be 12 inches back and 12 inches up. Okay? You're not across the fucking room and you're not high up on a mountain. Okay? You're just 12 inches back, 12 inches up. And that mentality allows you to have this sense of like calm detachment, but you're still there. You're still there in the room. You're just not on the same level. You're not experiencing what she's experiencing. And so if you can habitualize yourself into creating a state of mind, things go a lot better when it comes to your woman bringing you whatever the hell it is, whether she's sad or she's missing you or she's upset, even if she's upset at you or if it's something outside of you, it doesn't matter. Now, how to do that, okay? How to do that comes from practice through observation. So you're going to start by not veering away, okay? So your woman brings some sort of like emotional situation to you, all right? No matter what it is, doesn't matter what the emotion is, doesn't matter what the situation is, and you simply get into it. So the first step is to not habitually back off or try to close off or cut off or try to quickly solve it with reason. Just be there, all right? The second step is to watch and engage your own emotional reaction. Now, of course, like if you're not practiced at this, you're going to observe an emotional reaction. Maybe you'll feel fear. Maybe you will feel, maybe you're going to feel fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, maybe joint sadness, whatever it is. You might feel a joint emotion with her. Or you might feel something completely different and separate. Maybe you're going to feel attacked. Maybe you're going to feel like a victim. I don't know. But whatever the emotion is that rises up as a natural reaction, all you have to do is just be mindful and observing it. Okay? Now, once you become accustomed to observing that knee-jerk reaction, at that point, now you can't ignore it all the time. Now it's moving away from being a knee-jerk reaction to something you're observing as a reaction. And at that point, you can start not reacting. You can start just detaching yourself from that knee-jerk response. But it just comes from observation, from not getting immersed into it and listening to the music. Okay? Just because you're not so emotionally invested as her doesn't mean you're not present. Just like the conductor is right there with every single musician, hearing everything that they're doing, probably even more detail than they are, right? Because they're just focused on the one thing that they're doing. The violinists are just watching their music. They're barely even listening to the whole shit. Maybe it's like unconsciously they're listening to the whole song, but they're really hyper-focused on just their individual experience. The conductor has everybody. He's listening to everyone, listening to the smallest details that what each person's doing. So that's how, in order to do that, he has to be somewhat detached. But it doesn't mean he doesn't care any less. And this is something I learned a long time ago, where, before I had a greater understanding, there was this frustration with women when I wasn't upset as they were, as if I wasn't taking it seriously. And I didn't understand really what was happening. And so I even went through a period of where I would be emotionally with them. Like I would react the way they did. I sided into their boat, so to speak. And it didn't make anything better. Not one bit. Now we just had, again, like I mentioned before, two people who are off kilter in the same boat. And that doesn't solve anything until it like fizzles out and then you can move on. It's much more effective to remain in your own boat and observe what's happening, and then you can more easily assess the situation, again, first by acknowledging. Okay? So that's what I wanted to say about that. This is the sort of thing, well, there's many things that separate real from fake, but knowing how to properly engage women in their emotions is one of the major things that separates men from fake men, from males and men, fake doms, real doms. Because whether you're in a dynamic that's BDSM or DS or a vanilla relationship, these things are going to come up. They're going to come up. If you're dealing with women, no matter what the context, these things are going to come up. And you absolutely you have to know how to deal with these things. Absolutely. Like there's no way around it unless you are a pro dom and you only deal with subs on a strict dynamic basis where there is no romantic interaction whatsoever. And there's certainly some very skilled pro doms out there, and that's all they do. And they basically treated like a massage therapist, where like the woman would come to them, and they even deal with men as well, where the person would come to them for a specific service, they get paid, and then they pay, and then they go home. And that's like a completely different scenario, okay? But if you're dealing with a woman who's in your life, this is a skill that you absolutely have to develop. And if you don't, it will lead to ruin. This is one of the seeds that can lead to rot if you don't know how to handle these situations, because when you do handle it well, what this does is it slowly grows the seed of trust. And the more she can trust that you can handle her fucking craziness and all of her 12 different personalities, shows her that you have the wherewithal and the skill to not be bothered by her, that she is not a challenge to you, that nothing that she does is going to throw you off your square. You're firmly rooted into the ground, and not through aggressiveness, just through calm groundedness. That's the difference. That's the difference between real and fake. Well, one of the differences, but on a very foundational level, that's the difference. Males will get thrown off. They'll get thrown off by the smallest thing. They will also shy away, right? They'll clam up. They won't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with this shit. They hang up the phone. They storm out. They shut down. They become, they shut down communication. They don't want to talk. This is not the way. It will not cause growth. It will erode her trust in you. Because she's like, wait a second, if he can't handle me because I had a bad day, or because I'm a little upset, or because I've got my period, what the fuck is gonna happen when something serious happens? Because I'm just little old me. I just had like a bad day at work because there's some bitch who's talking shit about me in the break room. Like, what happens when something real happens in life? Something that's cause of serious concern. Can he handle that? Does he have the mental and emotional wherewithal to deal with it? And not in some like over-the-top bravado aggressiveness, more so in a grounded unmovingness, where he has stillness inside him. Stillness. Now, if anybody's curious, if you want to learn how to develop internal stillness, I suggest doing a little study into Buddhism. I'm not trying to be preachy or anything like that. I'm not a Buddhist, but I studied Buddhism for a very long time, starting in high school. And it's more of a science than a religion, but it has to be characterized or categorized as a religion by the world. But it's really not that much of a religion. It's more of psychology and science. But I encourage you to study some Buddhism. It doesn't mean you have to be a Buddhist. Just study some of it. A really good book to like getting your feet wet, pardon the pun, is called Entering the Stream. So it's this book called Entering the Stream. It was the first book that I was assigned by a teacher after finding my mother's book by Hermann Hesse called Siddhartha. It was actually the first book that I read was that one. But go get a copy of Entering the Stream and it'll be beneficial. So it looks like I'm having some sort of weird connection issue. So I'm going to end it here. I hope this was educational and informative, and thank you for those who have stopped by, and thank you for those who are catching me on the live stream, or I'm sorry, on the replay. Wait, real quick, I'll answer this question. Carmen, how can we tell sooner than later as women if the man in front of us is true to form or putting up a front, especially if we have self-doubt in discerning this in men? Well, it's consistency. So, I mean, if you really want to be, gamed up about it and it's within your emotional constitution, you can test these sort of things. You can see how he deals with you being really sad about something. You can test and you can make shit up. It's not something that I'm advocating because it's dishonesty, but that's a way to speed things up. I create tests all the time to see how she will handle things. I do it all the time. So you can do this as a woman as well and see how he handles your emotional states, and you can make them up. Or if you've got that kind of life where shit is always happening and there's all kinds of things to always talk about, see how he handles it. See how he handles with you being sad, see how he handles you being angry, and so on. And now this doesn't necessarily mean he's a real man or a real dom, because that's just one facet, but it's foundational. So it's really good if he has that sort of like emotional control skills. It's so foundational that the things on top of it can be a little off and the foundation can be solid, and that's really good. Okay, it just means he doesn't have the skill or knowledge for those more finer details, but the foundational aspect is part of his identity. And so if there's a strong core identity and the skills above that are maybe a little off, or some things are missing due to ignorance or lack of education, that's fine. But if they have a solid core foundation in their identity and their emotional control, that's really, really important. So you can go out of your way to make tests if you have that moral compass that says this is okay. If you think that's not okay, then you're just gonna have to wait for things to come up organically and just see what happens. So, all right, if there's not any other questions, I'm going to shut this down and get on to the gym. And so it was fantastic with you all coming by. I appreciate it, and thank you for watching on the replay. Again, if anyone wants to get into some coaching, I have a monthly membership chock full of all kinds of great videos right now. It's at thedominanceacademy.com, and there's also call options. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's the video membership course, as well as options to get on calls with me in different packages. So please take a moment and check that out. All right, until next time, we'll catch you later.